Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we continue following the turbulent love story of Hoai Ca and Hùng, two people who only wish for a peaceful life, yet fate just loves throwing challenges their way. And in this episode, Hung's mother finally returns after years of disappearing. But the biggest question hanging in the air is this: has she truly changed? Or is she just another storm about to crash into their already fragile world? Unexpected actions, unreadable expressions, old wounds that everyone thought had healed. Everything will be revealed in today's video. Make sure to watch until the very end, because the final twist is something you won't see coming. In the morning, once the rush had passed, the countryside market settled into a strangely peaceful quiet. The noisy chatter from earlier faded, leaving only distant calls carried by the wind and the clatter of knives and cutting boards from the noodle stall across the way. The scent of freshly harvested vegetables, still wet with dew, mixed with the smell of eggplants and newly steamed sweet potatoes, creating a fragrance so familiar that only those who grew up in the countryside would recognize it instantly. Hoai Ca crouched in front of her stall, her hands moving quickly as she straightened each basket of eggplants, sweet potatoes, and bunches of cilantro. She had been selling since dawn. The hem of her shirt was slightly stained with soil. A few strands of hair stuck to her sweaty temple, yet her face remained bright and gentle. Behind her, Mother Ha spread out a small mat for Tony to sit and play on. One hand kept knitting a tiny scarf for the boy, while the other occasionally reached out to steady him whenever he leaned too far. Tony was in the early stage of learning to speak. His mouth was always murmuring nonsense, except for one word he tried his absolute best to pronounce clearly. Ba bie. A familiar engine sound approached from the distance. As soon as Hung turned into the market gate, the vendor next to them teased with a grin. "Your future husband's here to pick you up, Ca." Hoai Ca flushed pink, lowering her face into the basket of grains as if she could hide inside it. The motorbike stopped in front of the stall. Hung flipped down the kickstand, brushed a bit of dust off his white t-shirt, then walked toward them. Tall, lean, suntanned, just looking at him brought an odd warmth. "Done yet? I'll take you home," he said. His voice was deep and steady, the kind that told you he'd spent the whole morning running around, but still made time just for this moment. Hoai Ca looked up, wiping a bead of sweat from her temple with the back of her hand. "Almost. Today's crowded." Right then, Tony froze on the mat like someone had flipped a switch. He turned, his round eyes locking onto Hung, and his face lit up like headlights. His chubby little legs wobbled as he stood. His tiny hands flailed excitedly, his mouth wide open as he leaned toward Hung with all his might. "Ba bie." The word was crooked, the final sound breathless, but the effort behind it was enough to melt anyone on the spot. Hung stopped short, his eyes trembling ever so slightly. He bent down and scooped Tony into his arms as if picking up his entire little sky. "Ba's here." "Ba's right here," he laughed, spinning the boy gently. Well, that was clear. Such a clever little man, huh?" Tony wrapped his arms around his father's neck in a tight hold, afraid of slipping. And as if worried the adults might forget, he repeated it 3 more times. "Ba bie bie." Those imperfect, lisping syllables were somehow so beautiful that the entire morning market seemed to pause for a heartbeat. Hoai Ca watched them, her eyes shimmering, part joy, part ache, part warmth. The moment was so whole, so tender, that she wished she could keep it forever without daring to touch it. Behind them, Mother Ha let out a quiet sigh, her soft smile mingled with something bittersweet. That peace. Hoai Ca had no idea that just a few minutes later, it would shatter, broken by a familiar figure appearing at the far end of the market. On the way home, the market had already quieted down. The midday sun stretched across the road in long, pale golden streaks. Hung slowed the motorbike as he noticed the last clothing stall at the end of the market, with a row of brand new sweaters hanging outside, all in bright, warm colors. "Buy a new warm jacket for your mom," he said softly, glancing at Mother Ha, who was holding Tony. He wasn't ordering her, but the way he said it made it clear he really wanted this. Hoai Ca got off the bike and walked into the stall. In front of her was an entire wall of clothes, sweaters, padded jackets, quilted coats, all kinds. She picked up one, tried another, pressed each sleeve against her arm to feel the softness and warmth. Hung stood beside her, arms crossed, watching her choose with an oddly serious face. "She raised you with so much hardship," he said, his voice low and sincere. "Pick something good. Something warm. Don't hesitate." Hoai Ca froze for a second, such a simple sentence, yet it hit right where she was most tender. Having a man who understood her, who cared for her foster mother as if she were his own, that feeling was precious in a way she could hardly put into words. She finally chose two beautiful pieces. A padded jacket for early mornings at the market so her mom wouldn't feel the cold. A thick knitted sweater for wearing at home. Both were nicer than what she usually dared to buy. When she handed them to Mother Ha to try on, the older woman jumped a little, her face turning red. "Good heavens! You should be saving money to raise the boy. Why buy something so expensive?" Hoai Ca held onto her mother's arm, her voice soft as water. "You have to stay healthy to help me sell vegetables. It's cold this season. If you catch a cough, who's going to watch Tony?" Standing beside them, Hung added a single line, short, firm, and final. "Please wear it. For my peace of mind." Mother Ha looked at the two young people in front of her, one she had raised since she was small, and the other who loved Hoai Ca so deeply he treated her like his own mother. Then she looked at Tony tugging on Hung's hand, his mouth trying so hard to form the only two words he knew. "Ba vie." A long sigh slipped out, not from fatigue, but from happiness. "All right, fine," she said, her eyes turning misty. "I'll wear it. I know how much you two care about me." The new jacket settled onto her shoulders, warm, fitting, and full of a tenderness she hadn't felt this clearly in years. Tony tugged at the sleeve of her new coat, repeating again, "Ba vie, vie." His little, imperfect voice made all three adults burst into laughter. Just a small moment, but it lit up the entire quiet, peaceful countryside noon. "You've been cooking with firewood for too long. I bought a rice cooker so it's easier for you," Hung said while carrying a brand new box out of the store. Hoai Ca followed behind him, wiping her hands, still stained with soil from the vegetable stall, and shook her head gently. "No, it's too expensive. We still have so many things to take care of." Hung turned to look at her, cutting her off immediately, his voice firm as steel. "It's not expensive. With a kid in the house, anything that makes things easier is worth buying. You keep cooking with firewood like this, you'll catch a cold. Then who's going to take care of Tony?" Hoai Ca fell silent. The way he spoke wasn't controlling, it was pure concern. As for Tony, the moment he saw the new rice cooker box, his eyes lit up like headlights. He crawled over and slapped the box repeatedly as if cheering them on. "Ba vie." Hung laughed. "Yeah, vie bought it for your mom. You approve, huh?" Tony smacked the box one more time, just to be sure. Back home, the sun was high, and the cold wind sweeping down from the mountains made the metal roof clatter. Hoai Ca placed the rice cooker box on the wooden table and began packing Tony's things to take him to school. Pants, warm clothes, scarf, milk bottle, tissues, arranging everything neatly, one by one. Hung leaned against the doorway, watching the two of them. After a few quiet seconds, he asked, "I'll drive you both down there this afternoon, okay?" Hoai Ca paused and looked back. No need. I'll take the bus with Tony, it's warmer. In this cold, riding a motorbike all the way there, we'll get sick. She said it while pulling down Tony's sleeves and gently smoothing his hair, small gestures, but full of a mother's care. Hung frowned slightly. Let me take you. The bus might be crowded, Tony's still so little. Hoai Ca shook her head, her voice soft but firm. It's fine. You still have work at the office. I don't want you going back and forth just because of us. I can go on my own. Hung stood still for a moment, wanting to argue, but seeing the determination on her face, he could only sigh and nod. Fine, but call me when you get there. His voice grew lower, slower, like he wasn't ready for her to leave just yet. Hoai Ca smiled. I know. Don't worry. Tony was hugging his small blanket, repeating the only word he had mastered in his tiny life. B.A. Hung patted his son's head, looking at the two of them, and suddenly, a strange uneasiness flickered in his chest. He didn't say anything. He just stood there and added one last sentence. If it gets too cold, wait for me. Don't push yourself. Right after Hung and Hoai Ca left the house, the small alley fell back into its usual quiet, so quiet that the sound of the wind slipping through the old jackfruit leaves could be heard clearly. The morning sunlight spread a pale golden layer across the road, but the early season cold still cut sharply against the skin. At the entrance of the alley, Hung's mother stood motionless like a shadow. She had been standing there so long that her feet felt numb, the thin jacket she wore barely enough to stop her shoulders from trembling. Twice she had turned back, intending to leave, and each time, the moment she reached the gate, her heartbeat tightened painfully, fear rose, and she stepped back again. But in the end, her feet remained rooted there. In front of her was a home both familiar and distant, only a few dozen steps away, yet she felt as though an entire lifetime she had lost stood between her and that door. Her eyes were red. For years, she hadn't dared look directly at this house, just as she hadn't dared face her own past. In her hands was a small bag of still warm pastries. She made them herself, staying up all night to shape each one, her hands trembling like someone relearning something long forgotten. When Hung was little, every time he came home from school, she would slip a pastry into his hand and say, "Eat this to warm your stomach, my boy." Now she held that same bag, but stood outside the gate like someone begging for a chance to reclaim a love she had once thrown away. And she didn't know, as Hung rode toward the office, his heart calm and steady, that the mother he thought would never return was standing right at his door. Inside the house, Mother Ha was arranging bundles of morning vegetables still wet with dew. The crisp slicing of her knife echoed softly, steady, peaceful. When a faint knock sounded at the gate, so soft it could have been a cat tapping its claws, Mother Ha looked up. Opening the door, she froze for a heartbeat. There stood Hung's mother, frail frame, faded coat, silvering hair, eyes tired and unsure, like someone who had wandered back home, but wasn't sure if anyone wanted her. "Come in," Mother Ha said gently. "You're looking for Hoai Ca? She just took the little one down to school." Hung's mother only nodded. Her fingers tightened around the handle of the pastry bag until they turned white. I just came to look at the house, to see how they're living. I don't dare face my son yet." Her voice shook like someone fighting an emotion too heavy to carry. The two women sat in the small kitchen. The kettle on the fire glowed red beneath, steam rising, a sharp contrast to Hung's mother's icy hands. Between them was the tray of pastries she brought, warm pastries, but a heart frozen with guilt. Neither spoke for a long while. The silence was so heavy they could hear the water dripping from washed vegetables. At last, Hung's mother clenched her hands. She took a deep breath, but her voice still trembled. I wronged him so much that even thinking about it now still hurts. For years, I haven't dared to look him in the eye. I miss him. I miss him to death, but standing at the door makes my legs shake. I can't bring myself to knock. A tear slipped down, landing right on the worn fabric of her coat, as though falling onto all the years she had lost. Mother Ha poured a cup of hot water and slid it across, like offering a small flame of comfort. Children get angry because they're hurt, she said softly. They get angry because they still care. He won't abandon his mother. If you're sincere, he'll feel it. Hung's mother bit her lip until it bled. Then she finally voiced the weight she had been carrying. I'm trying to buy back the old house, the one I pawned years ago because I was desperate. The owner wants 800 million. I haven't managed to gather it. She placed a hand over her chest, her eyes blurry. If I can buy back the house, then I'll dare face my son. I want to give him a proper home, so he won't have to be ashamed because of me. Her voice was both hopeless and determined, like someone swimming in icy water, but refusing to sink. Mother Ha moved closer and placed her hand over hers. Her eyes softened, understanding, empathetic, the kind of understanding only someone who had lived through deep pain could offer. Step by step, she said. Debts can be paid. Houses can be reclaimed. The heart is what matters most. The day you two meet again will come. The more he resents, the more he still loves. The small kitchen fell quiet. No wind, no motorbikes, not even murmurs from the yard. Only two mothers, one trying to mend a broken past, and one who understood that pain better than anyone. In that moment, both silently held on to a single hope. That one day, the son would embrace the mother who once hurt him, and a fractured family might finally be made whole again. Evening fell quickly. The air turned cold, and the wind sweeping in from the fields whipped at Hung's mother's thin jacket. She stepped out into the yard, a few dried leaves spinning to the ground, and stood still, staring at Hoai Ca's small house as if watching a piece of her past return to life. Looking into the kitchen, she imagined Hung at 13 or 14, hands dirty with soil, but always smiling. When her eyes drifted toward the front porch, she seemed to see her son sitting there sharpening a knife to help her cook, just like in the old days. Each flickering memory cut into her heart like a blade. She placed a hand on her chest, trying to steady her breath. She wanted to walk deeper into the house, sit a little longer. But she was afraid. Afraid that if she stayed even a second more, she wouldn't have the strength to walk away. Afraid that if Hung suddenly returned, she wouldn't know how to face him. So she simply stood there. Stood for a very long time, with a longing in her eyes so deep anyone witnessing it would feel their heart twist. Then she turned and slowly walked out of the yard. Not because she wanted to leave, but because she knew, when she finally faced Hung again, she wanted to stand before him with dignity. To have something to say, something to show, instead of empty hands and a past full of mistakes. Walking down the dirt road, she whispered a vow to herself. She must buy back the old house. She must rebuild a proper home so that mother and son could return to each other after years of separation. No matter how hard it would be, no matter how exhausting, no matter how slowly she had to save, she would do it. Because this was her last chance to fulfill the duty of a mother. As the cold evening deepened, her silhouette grew smaller with every step, but the resolve in her heart burned bigger than ever. Stay tuned for the next episode tomorrow to find out what happens next. Perhaps the reunion you've been waiting for is closer than you think. If you want, I can continue with the moment Hung comes home and finds the bag of pastries, or Hoai Ca calling to tell him something feels strange, or Hung's mother secretly finding a job to start saving money. Just tell me the direction. I'll carry the story forward seamlessly.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người phần tiếp theo của câu chuyện về Ly Hoai Ca và cảnh sát Hùng. Mọi người thân mến, thì như mọi người cũng đã biết thì Hùng và Hoài Ca hiện tại thì đang ở bên nhau rất là hạnh phúc. Tuy nhiên thì cơn ác mộng của Hoài Ca đã quay trở về, đó chính là mẹ của Hùng. Không biết lần này thì bà ta về với ý đồ gì. Và liệu Hoài Ca có đủ sức để có thể vượt qua cái khó khăn đấy hay không? Thì hãy cùng mình đón xem ở tập tiếp theo nhé mọi người. Chào tạm biệt mọi người nhé. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo.